If you could tell me your name,
Bernard Joseph Francis Sr.,
and could you spell it for me, please?
Bernard J period Francis, comma, SR period.
Perfect. One second. Okay. The first thing we do is, you know what we're doing.
No, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Well,
All right. Um, what we're doing. Anyway, first of all, let's go back as far back as that you know. Where do you know where your family line originally came from?
originally from Donaldsville, to my knowledge.
Well, prior to that, where's your ancestors? Are they all from the Caribbean? Are they all from? Do you know?
I would say that my ancestry would be from Africa because, see, I have mixed blood in me. My my mother's father was white. I'm sorry, was black. Uh, my mother's mother was white. My mother was adopted by Melvina Trope, who I knew as my grandmother. She, in fact, raised me. But my mother's mother was white. Her father was black. So she more or less was, uh, I guess you could say, adopted or taken by the priest, and I think it was Father Van Bass some years ago, who was the pastor here, and uh, she lived with him until my grandmother, Melvina Trope, she adopted my mother.
So you don't know whether your family is from Africa or from the Caribbean?
That I don't know.
Okay.
I guess
That's good.
my color is probably reflective of both the black and the white in me.
Um, what was it like growing up in Donaldsonville when you were a kid?
It was very unusual. When I say unusual, because I said I didn't become cognizant of discrimination in the true sense of the word until I went into the military. I can remember as coming up as a young kid, one evening I was walking on Opelousas Street, and there was some white girls who went to Ascension Catholic. I went to St. Catherine of Siena, and they were walking on the same sidewalk I was walking on, and they were eating an ice cream cone. And as I approached the passenger, I said, "Hey, nigga, you want some ice cream cone?" And I didn't say anything about it. Like I said, I didn't get a true appreciation of what segregation was until I went to the military. I went to St. Catherine of Siena School, which was not predominantly, but a black school. It was all black. The total population of the school from the first grade through the 12th was about 200 or 300 students, if that many. In my graduation class in 1962, there were about 32 of us. Shortly after I graduated, when I say shortly, we had graduation ceremonies on, I think, June the 30th, 1962, June 31st, 1962. I was in the Air Force sitting in Texas, Amarillo, Texas. Lackland, Texas. From Lackland, I went to Amarillo. But shortly thereafter, the the Catholic school system integrated. It became the interparochial school system. But coming up, I didn't really sense that there was discrimination. I knew that as coloreds we went. That was a term used back in that day. Colored, we went one way, and as whites, the whites went another way. There were different movie theaters. I can remember in the courthouse. Now, this was when I came back from the military. I went upstairs in the courthouse because I hadn't been in there before in my life. Never had any reason to go. When I went to the courthouse, there was one side that said colored entrance and one side that said white entrance. And there were two water coolers, one for the white and one for the colored. I realized when I saw that reflecting back on the military, I mean, it became a little bit perturbed to me. Then I got a little bit upset. I'm going to try to stay back with the earlier days. Like I said, I went to the Catholic school. There wasn't much interrelations, if any at all, between the two schools, between Ascension Catholic and between the school that I went to, St. Catherine of Siena. We were required to wear khaki pants and shirt with a black necktie. The girls were required to wear white socks, black and white shoes, with a blue skirt, pleated skirt, and a white blouse. I don't remember what the kids at Ascension Catholic had to wear. Our schools were on opposite, not ends of the city, but within the parameter. When I say the parameter, going from the railroad track to the Mississippi River, we were on opposite ends. Ascension Catholic was closer toward the river. St. Catherine was closer toward the railroad track. What was unique was that some years, I don't remember the exact period of time, but St. Catherine owned the property where Ascension Catholic was located. That's right, there was an exchange made when I was in the military. My uncle, he's deceased now, Willie Francis, he was very vocal at the time, and he was upset about the exchange because what the exchange did was give Ascension Catholic some property up near where their school was, and in turn for that property, Ascension Catholic gave St. Catherine some property by the railroad track. And just as a plug, it's always unique. When you want to find people of color, you find a railroad track, and you will find them. I've done this throughout my life.
Why?
I talked to someone about that over the years, and they tell me that because property in an area of a railroad track, it has a depreciation in the value, so it's cheaper. That may account for it, but whenever I wanted to, wherever I went, I don't care what city, if I wanted to find people of color, I look for a railroad track, and I can find them in that area, so that may account for that.
Interesting, I never thought of that.
Well, it's just something that I've always noticed, because whenever I would travel, I would find some railroad tracks. If I find railroad tracks, find people of color.
Just as a quick question, what did you do in the Air Force?
When I enlisted into the Air Force, I had it was 64630. That was my specification code, and that was a supply specialist. But before my tour was completed with the Air Force, I mean, it was like a windstorm. When I say like a windstorm, because I went in as that, first I was going to be a warehouse supply specialist, and then that changed. I became what they call an organizational supply specialist. And I can remember when I was in Japan, they needed an E7. There were no E7s on base. They wanted somebody to be in charge of the system. So they approached me and they asked me if I would accept that temporary position. No title, no money, but just that position. And I told them I would, and I will have to divert to color now. There was a white civilian who came up to me and told me, BJ, if I were you, I would not take this position. This is a little bit above you. And I told him, I will take the position. If I can't do the job, fire me. And I had the position until they were able to replace me with a true E7. So I had this position for a very long time. Same token, I had enrolled in the University of Maryland. There was a white professor. He used to go to the weight room I used to go in. I had enrolled in a psychology course. And we were working out one day, and he told me, well, Mr. Francis, you know, if I were you, I would drop out of this course. I don't think this is the type of material that you need to be dealing with. I said, okay, thank you, and I pursued. And I said, this very day, today, I would like to see that Sam individual, because had I taken his advice, I think I would have hurt myself tremendously. I did just the opposite of what he suggested I do. And if I could find him today, I would just thank him for giving me his words of encouragement.
Let me take you back. I want to get to where you are right here, but I'm gonna go back. The reason I asked you about the Air Force is because I was in the Air Force.
Okay.
I was a cop in the Air Force. From
Oh, okay.
77 to 81, and I can't remember my specialty number.
Oh, I remember mine. I remember mine. I remember mine
my
quite
Social
well.
Security because that was my military ID also.
No, I remember the Social Security, but I remember my specialty number. I remember my serial number, AF81648702. I don't know why I can remember those numbers, but those numbers I can't remember.
Yeah, you're better than me.
Yeah.
Growing up a kid, and what I would like to do, like I said, I'm from here,
Okay.
and I actually had a little grocery store back the tracks. It used to be, can't think of the name now. It's no longer open. If you go, you know where the rice mill was?
Yeah,
About a block or two to the left, and there's like a little convenience.
that's coming this way. They look right on Front Street, facing the railroad track. Was that the store?
No, it was like about 3 blocks. Like not it was behind the rice mill, so it was about 5 blocks behind the tracks.
Oh, okay. Is the building? It was a brick building, right?
And it had a car wash too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I used to own it.
Oh, okay. There's a young man now who has a ministry there.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I remember.
But anyway, that was my real first total submersion into the black community.
Okay.
And that's really what I got to see, because people came there to buy food.
Right, right.
Okay, and I got to see the kids. The kids grew up around me. I hired them to help clean up
Right.
everything and work the store. And so that was my real first total immersion
Right.
into it.
This used to be a grocery store where you're sitting. Some
I didn't
years
know
ago.
that.
Some years ago.
Talk to me about what the point was that there's like two at that point, and this was like when I was a kid, didn't even really understand it. There were really two societies. There was a white society and a black society.
Right.
Okay. Talk to me about the black society, but not in relation to the white society. What was it like being black in a black community?
First, I'm going to make an observation on what you just said. As far as I was concerned coming up, white was just another world altogether. I mean, we just had no contact with that world. There was a movie theater. It was called the Harlem Movie Theater. We used to go to the movie theater. When that movie theater closed down, we started going up to the Grand, but we had to go upstairs to the Grand. Blacks were allowed to go to the theater, but you had to go upstairs. When I was a kid, I used to work for my uncle. My uncle had a monument company. He used to make burial vaults and headstones, and I worked for him from my early childhood. Between him and my father was a brick mason. So between not laying bricks, I never could do that. I tried, just couldn't do it. I could mix the mortar, I could haul the bricks, but I didn't have the talent to whip that mortar with a trowel. So between my uncle and my father, I worked for the two of them. Our exposure to anybody other than people in our immediate area was very limited. Let's call it this side of the track where you had your store. That was one part of the city that we didn't necessarily go. We were told, you can't go on the other side of the track. Those people are bad over there. So we didn't necessarily come on this side. My exposure was to my immediate neighborhood and the school. The school was about probably maybe 4 blocks from my house. The old school and even the new school was about 4 blocks. So from the school to my house, from the house to the movie theater, and then there was subsequently a swimming pool, and then from the house to the swimming pool. Most of my contact was with the people that lived in the block that I lived in. Maybe we can go, let's say from Opelousas Street to Claiborne Street to William Street. That was it. That was the extent of my dealings, and within that 2-block area. Most of it was in that 1 block, because it was just the people in that block that we dealt with. I don't know, maybe I used to always hear people say there was something unusual about those kids who went to the Catholic school. Maybe that might have had something to do with it. I don't know, because we didn't mingle or socialize with people outside of our immediate circle. The only time something like immediate circle, the only time something like that would happen, that it would be out of the immediate circle, if we would go to something like a record hop or a record spin at the True Friends Hall. That's where I met my wife. I was in the 8th grade. She was in the 9th grade. So that's how I came in contact with people beyond my immediate community. I used to work for my uncle, and I used to have to paint tombs in the graveyard, cut grass. And I always liked to lie on a tomb because it was very, very cool. And I'd lie there and I'd just look at the clouds. And I'd always tell myself that what I was doing then, I would never do that for the rest of my life. Never knew exactly what I would do, but I knew what I wouldn't do. And I also made a promise that everybody that I knew in my family would work for me except my mother, because my mother worked for me all of her life. So I said, I will be in such a way that everybody will work for me except my mother. And in one way or another, everybody in my family has worked for me. My mother worked all of her life for me. She's deceased now. So she never had to work for me, other than what she did at that point.
You said something. You said that the kids that went to Catholic school. You talking about the black kids?
Right, the black kids that went to the Catholic school. That's correct.
So they were. So y'all were considered kind of different from the rest of the black community.
Well, what would happen is, I'm not answering your question directly, and I always ask people to answer my questions directly. So I guess I may as well answer that. Yes. But one thing that would add flavor to that is when we went to St. Catherine's, when I was in about the 7th or 8th grade, the 8th grade class was housed right behind St. Catherine's Church, which is at the corner of Claiborne and St. Patrick. However, the cafeteria and where the man's school was at the corner of Williams and St. Patrick, which was about 2.5, 3 blocks away. And we would have to march as a group. When it was time for lunch, we'd have to march as a group from St. Catherine and Claiborne to Lessard and Williams. And people would always know that that was the Catholic kids passing because it was so quiet. You could hear a pin drop. And I used to always hear people talk about that, how when those kids from a Catholic school would pass their march, they'd be so quiet and so orderly.
Was there a level of respect for the Catholic school back then?
Yes, there was. There was also a level of respect for the public schools, which would have been Lowry. That was the major school here in Donaldsonville at that time. Right now, I live approximately a block and a half from where that school was. But when I was coming up, I didn't know what that side of the bayou was like. As I told you, we were restricted, either imposed upon ourselves. Nope, not that. It would be our parents. This is where you will stay. You will not go any further than this. So they kept us in that particular neighborhood, that particular area.
Give me a day in the life of when you were a kid. What did you do?
Used to go steal sugar cane. We would sometimes we would leave our house and we'd walk down the street, and sometimes we'd use a word that we weren't supposed to use. And somebody would, because from our house to the railroad track, we would have to pass St. Catherine's School. And somebody would tell the nuns that some of your students were cursing. And we would get it the very next day. We'd get our butts whipped the very next day. But anyway, we'd go down, and sometimes if there was a train passing, we'd hop on a train. And we'd ride on down, which we thought was miles and miles, but it was just a couple of blocks on a slow-moving train, and we'd jump off. And then we'd run in the sugar cane field and snatch some sugar cane, and then we'd run out and then come back to the house. I remember one time, I guess we were naive. We figured pumpkins and things just grew. Nobody planted them. Over by the fairgrounds, we were passing there, and we saw these big old yellow things. There's another name for them besides pumpkins, too. It's like a big and round with a neck that curves on it. I forget what they call it. But we saw all these things growing. And we didn't figure anybody owned it. We just figured it just grew because it grew. So we got a wheelbarrow and just grabbed as much as we can and brought it home. And lo and behold, the owner caught us. So we had to bring everything back. Like I said, we didn't know that things just didn't grow and they were just there for the taking. But then we would get our behinds whipped pretty often. get it whipped twice. In fact, I can remember one time getting it whipped 3 times. Because my mother would whip up and say, I'm going to tell your father. So we had to prepare for another whipping. So when the father got home, he whipped us again. I remember one time I was at St. Catherine. I spent more time with my grandmother than I did at my parents' house. I lived with my grandmother, which was two houses from the school. The lots were very narrow, 30 feet wide, so less than 100 feet the school was at. So I remember one day we were in school. I can't remember the nun's name, but she was giving somebody a spanking, and I made a wise remark. If I was getting a whipping, I'd go to sleep. That way I wouldn't feel it. She heard. So she called me up there. She said, what did you say? I said, nothing. She said, tell me what you said or you will get a spanking. So I told her what I said. She said, well, we're going to find out if you can get a whipping and sleep at the same time. So she had me bent over the desk. And she commenced to spanking my backside. And she said, are you sleeping? I said, no. So she'd whip me a little bit. Are you sleeping? I said, yes. She said, if you're sleeping, how can you talk? So this just went on for a while. And she told me, she said, now if you tell your grandmother, you're going to get another spanking. So lo and behold, I went to my house and I told my grandmother. And somebody told sister that I had told my grandmother. So I got another spanking the next day for telling. It was very interesting.
You was a lawyer, of course you got a smart mouth. Yeah. The reason I laugh is because we live at the end of our lane was the sugarcane field. And it's like,
Right.
sugarcane.
Oh yeah, everybody around here.
Jumping on trains. I used to go hunting in the woods.
Yeah.
That's a long walk.
Yeah. Well, we used to catch the train, slow moving train, jump on it, and ride down a little piece and get some sugar cane, and then walk back.
What else? Did you ever go to? You never went to the river or a bayou?
Oh, do you mean swimming?
Yeah.
Okay. Now what we did is, the bayou. No, never swam in the bayou. We had a couple of brothers, Catholic priests, Father John Lewis, and I can't remember the other brother's name, but Carlos, that's right, John and Carlos, they were black. They were not of the Josephite order, I don't remember. Their order was from Bay St. Louis. Well, those guys used to take us to Bay St. Louis sometime to swim in at the beach in Bay St. Louis. The priest that we had here, Father John Dahl, he stayed here a long time. We would go down to what they call Point Homer. That's where we would swim at, Point Homer. Once in a while, we would sometime go in the river, but it wasn't with the priest. It was on our own. We would just find somebody else and we'd go in the river. I can remember one time we snuck down to Point Homer, no supervision. No, it wasn't Point Homer. It was right here in Donaldsonville. There used to be a overflow from the river to these little ponds, but now that's more or less gone. But back then you had the little ponds, and we used to build rafts. Get some old trees or whatever and build the rafts. We'd build the rafts and then we'd get on, but we would do this right after school, so we didn't go home and change clothes. We'd go behind the levee right after school, build the rafts, and then we'd do our little thing on the raft from one end of the pond to the other. One time, I remember it was Marvel Colward. He was with us. Marvel, we all were on the raft capsized. So we all got wet. Now, that was going to be a tough thing to explain to the parents where we were when we were supposed to be at school. So what we did is we lit a little fire. Most of us got the clothes dried pretty much, but Marvel's pants caught a fire. So he had some tall explaining to do with that. But yeah, mischief things like that we did. Used to sneak off, go down to the swimming